Hi, everybody, and welcome back. Before I get started with Magic stuff, I want to tell you where I've been and why I've kind of been on a hiatus. So if you don't care about that stuff, if you have no interest, you might want to skip ahead. But I took a 2-week break after Christmas, or around that time. Maybe it was over Christmas. I don't remember. Yeah, something like that. Then I recorded a league playing probably Jeskai, and I was talking about how I was going to go to Grand Prix Lyon, and I was going to be preparing and that stuff. And well, I don't know that I'm going to GP Lyon anymore. I'm like 10% to go because I thought, I'm have to move to London. I'm moving to London. We're leaving Switzerland at the end of February. I'm going to be in the United States for a month, and then we're going to London. And I thought, well, maybe I don't want to spend the last few weekends that I have in this country in an expo center in France, especially when I like to be outside, and I kind of feel like just want to make the most of that weekend. And there's always going to be modern tournaments, modern Grand Prix, but I may not live in Switzerland ever again. So I don't know that I'm going to go. But that realization kind of also came at the same time that I had this realization that I am playing the worst Magic I have ever played. And that's probably partly why I haven't been recording leagues the last couple of weeks. Not just because I think I'm playing bad and that embarrasses me. I mean, obviously, I've made plenty of embarrassing mistakes playing Magic for all of you, and that hasn't stopped me before. But I just realized that I've been feeling kind of burned out with the game in a weird way. And I think it's actually just feeling tired and burned out in general. My sleep has been awful. Some of it's because I'm kind of a night owl, on top of the fact that my son wakes up a lot at night, and then I have to take care of him early in the morning. So for months now, I've been getting not enough sleep. And maybe it's because I'm in my 30s, but it's really catching up to me. And I think I've just had a ton on my mind, too, because as I mentioned before, I lost my job in December. And so I've been looking to talk to some career counselors and life coach type stuff because I want to completely redo my whole career. I was working as an IT business analyst for this large chemical company, and without going into the whole story, I'll just say that for the last 5 years, I've sort of realized that I didn't like what I do and I wanted a different career, but it's been easier to just keep doing what I'm doing and collecting a paycheck rather than figure out what I want to do with my life. But on top of just all this stuff, I feel like I've been under a lot of stress. And so that's affecting my sleep. My son's affecting my sleep. I feel like just a little less motivated to do things that I normally want to do. And so while I didn't want to not make videos, I just couldn't seem to bring myself to do it. I just didn't have that oomph and that drive, on top of the fact that I was playing badly. I think I've had the worst run of leagues that I've had since I started. I went in, and this is me trying, on my own, not making content, but I think I went 1-4, 1-4, 2-3, 2-3, 1-4. They were really bad. I was just dropping, feeling frustrated too. I was dropping from leagues, and it's just the reason I was losing are so dumb sometimes. It's I tapped the wrong land, or I played the wrong land, or I would come up with a great strategy and then just do the wrong thing, forget I was going to do it, or say, okay, I need to leave up this color because this is exactly why I'm going to leave up this color, and then I do something and just forget. So I'm just giving up so much percentage points on, I don't know how to explain it except to say that I feel like I'm playing distracted. It's I'm playing as this weird escape, I think, from some of my stress, and I'm not fully invested. I'm just I don't know, tap lands, do this. It's this really bad autopilot. And so then in some ways playing Magic even gets a little bit more frustrating because it's I want to do it to sort of escape or just to relax, but then I make these really dumb mistakes that just frustrate me. And so I don't know, it's just been this weird time, frustrating couple of weeks for me. And I actually thought maybe I'll just quit playing Magic. you know. And it's some of that negative self-talk that you do sometimes where you're like, I'm not any good anyway, you know, I don't have anything to offer to the community, and I'm not a great player. What am I even doing? Why am I doing this? It's just dumb. And I don't think that's the real answer, and I don't think that quitting Magic is going to make me a happier person or a more fulfilled person. Like, taking a little time or just not taking the game I was gonna say so seriously, not that I take it super seriously anyway, but maybe taking a little time, I don't know. But so anyway, long story short, that's kind of where I've been and why I suddenly stopped making content. It's not just Magic either. I've been having trouble like motivating myself to do photography, which I love, and like, you know, post on my Instagram account and stuff like that. And I don't want to say this, but I think it's just, I'm like afraid to use the word depression. It's not that I feel like I'm like deeply depressed. It's just that feeling of like there's so much change that's going to happen in my, there's like I'm leaving the place I've lived for nearly 3 years. You know, I have one of my children is turning 17 and trying to figure out, you know, her future is stressful, and then not working and trying to figure out a new career, and like, you know, it's just, I guess I just have a lot on my mind. Plus, you know, my wife hasn't worked full time since August, and I haven't really worked since November. So obviously, you know, money is becoming a stressor. So I think just kind of all that stress has been just like draining me and making me feel a little bit more depressed than I normally do. Because normally I'm, you know, fortunate that, not that I don't have negative thoughts or feelings like I think everybody does, but normally I'm like, have a pretty high level of, you know, happiness and like will to just do all the things that I like. So anyway, it's getting probably pretty personal with a bunch of you, and some of you really aren't interested in that, I'm sure, but I guess it maybe helps me to use this as a platform to vent, and especially when I say like I'm going to post the league every day and then I don't. I feel like I owe, not that I owe anybody anything, but I want to explain myself. That's what it is. I want to explain like what's been going on. So with that being said, what I might do is take a bit of a break from some of the gameplay content creation. I might not. I think I should do it when I feel motivated to do it. And what I think I need to do Magic wise, I just don't know that now's the right time, is I sort of need to, I think a short break maybe would be good, but kind of get back to fundamentals, if that makes sense. Like, you know, I feel like my personal play followed a pretty good trajectory to where I got to, you know, not a great player, but like completely just reasonable, I would say. You know, maybe decent, we'll say. And then, you know, maybe at times I've been a little bit better than decent, and then there's been this slow decline. I think it started when I took quite a long break from content creation. I really was very playing little Magic, and so I got a bit rusty, and then it's just sort of everything I just explained, I think, is also like contributed to that. And I know some of you might say, well, just put out games even if you don't play well, but you know, I don't want to put them out if I think I'm just playing terrible and doing everything wrong. I don't think it's fun for me, or it's just not a good product, so to speak. And then on top of that, like I said, I haven't been feeling as motivated. So but you know, please stay subscribed, and I'm not going to be gone forever. I might even post the league next week. This is kind of see how I just want to see how things go, and I want the freedom to just be like, okay, I don't have to worry that I'm not posting videos. You know, if I feel motivated to post videos, then I can, and if not, then that's okay too. I do have I have all the footage from the Jeskai Roundtable Part 2. I know I've mentioned that to you before, so I'm going to try and get after myself to get that done. Okay, so that's a lot of talking about non-Magic related stuff. Let's talk about Magic related stuff. I am going to play a league this week, and one of the reasons is I tried some new things. I don't know if that's right. I just wanted to try some new stuff. And I think that there, in some of the games in this league I just played, some of these very specific things I was trying came like there were good examples of how that ended up working out. And so I want to share that with you and see, you know, let you guys sort of look at how that went and come to your own conclusions. But I think I think because of that, it's a good league to show, and it wasn't a 1-4. So anyway, okay, so let's talk a little bit about the deck. Pretty standard. The one thing I was trying before, I don't know if that was in the video, I was trying I had dropped to 23 lands with an opt because I was only running 3 cryptic commands. But because I have more 4-drops than normal, I'm just back to the 24 lands. Now, you might notice that there's 2 Restoration Angels in this list. My thought, and this was before the Pro Tour, not that I think that really matters, but my thought about Restoration Angel actually came from Wall of Omens. I was looking at the humans list and thinking, you know, wouldn't it be nice if you could more profitably block some of their creatures, especially in surprise fashion, or just have blockers? And that made me think about Wall of Omens, and I thought, is it time for Wall of Omens to make a return, or maybe even Resto Kiki or Jeskai Kiki Control? The reason I say that is I've always thought Jeskai Kiki Control is probably good when Wall of Omens is good. And the reason is then you get to play the Wall of Omens Restoration Angel package. But once I started trying to figure out if I thought Wall of Omens could be good, obviously it didn't take much for me to start thinking about is Restoration Angel good. And I don't know, but I know that I miss playing Restoration Angel in the list because I really like the way Restoration Angel interacts with Snapcaster Mage. Later in the game, you don't have as much of a late game, say, engine as the pure control decks. But when you are the control deck, being able to resto blink a Snapcaster Mage to buy back a lightning bolt is great. And so it does help give the deck some additional late game strength, as well as being a really good blocker if your opponent has things like Thalias and, you know, up to, of course, a 3/3. Being able to block something and then have it die and your creature not is basically card advantage. And so I thought Resto, I wanted to try it. Mainly I was thinking because of things like the human matchup. Being able to flash in a blocker or even blink Snapcaster Mage. And then it's also just a reasonable threat on its own. And it has some nice synergy with Geist of St. Traft as well. Because if you attack with Geist into blockers and blink him with Restoration Angel, you get in for 4, and if they don't kill the Restoration Angel, even if you are suiciding Geist of St. Traft after that, the Restoration Angel plus Angel token get in for 7, which makes total of 11. So that is not completely unreasonable either. I'm only on the 2 Geist, just because I feel like, at least for the moment, in a matchup like humans, for example, he's probably not at his best. You're probably better off with something that can interact with Aether Vial, as well as be a surprise blocker like Vendilion Click. And then I'm only running the 1 of Spell Snare, basically because I'm not willing to cut a 3rd Cryptic command for the 2nd Spell Snare, and I don't want to go below 3 2-mana counter spells. So talking about the sideboard, this Blade Splisher package is also because I'm wondering how this might match up against in the humans matchup. Resto Blinking Blade Splicer can create a lot of first strike blockers that I'm hoping the humans deck will have trouble punching through, as well as just kind of being a good value card. You know, in the BGX decks, you can play Blade Splicer on 3 into Liliana of the Veil mana, and it's much better than Geist of St. Traft in that spot. I also have 1 piece of Graveyard Hate. This was originally 2 Relics of Progenitus, but I just kind of have trouble finding all of the space. As far as sweeper effects, I've been really happy with Settle the Wreckage. I think that could change. If everybody starts playing around it, it might lose some of its effectiveness. But right now, I haven't had a single opponent not just swing in to Settle the Wreckage and get blown out. Is it Staticaster? Is obviously another sweeper of sorts, so that's what I have here. And then for grindy, the counter package right now for like is this. Basically, I kind of like this split because you can bring it in a lot of places. Say like against a blue X deck, blue-white X, you can bring in all three of these counters. Against Tron, you can bring in all three of these counters. Against something like Valakut, you can bring all these counters. Against that one deck that just one landed control, you probably don't want to bring in the Disdainful Stroke, but you can bring in these counters and obviously have the Dispels there as well. It'd be nice to have some Ceremonious Rejections, especially because that deck just won. But this is just what I was testing in the league. Then some other interesting ones are the Wormcoil Engine. And the reason I'm trying the Wormcoil Engine, I'm trying Wormcoil and Keranos over Pia and Kira Nalaar. One is that in the blue mirrors, if you can resolve a Keranos, I think it's a lot better than Pia and Kira Nalaar. Also, I've always liked it in matchups where you're going to be the control deck. It'd be nice if it gained life, but at the very least, if you can drag the game out and then resolve a Keranos and still get like 14 life or something, you probably are just going to win the game because it's going to kill all of their creatures and kill them and draw you cards, and it's going to be nearly impossible for them to remove. And then the reason I'm trying Wormcoil Engine is because it'd be nice if it didn't die to Path. Well, actually that wouldn't be because that would make Tron ridiculous, but it's not so much for the blue-white X matchup, but the main reason I thought that I might want to try it is because against Death Shadow decks, they don't really run a good way to deal with this. And, you know, they have a lot of good answers to your removal spells with that one mana counter spell, not Disdainful Stroke, not Ceremonious Rejection. Dang it, what's the name of that? I always screw up Ceremonious Rejection. Well, I always screw up Disdainful Stroke and that card. I can't think of it. It's one mana counter instant or counter non-creature spell unless they pay 1. But if you have a creature, I think it's called Ferocious with 4 power or greater, it's just counter it. Anyway, you guys know what I'm talking about. So they have a lot of answers to things like Path to Exile with that card, but they can't really answer a creature, and so if you can drag the game out and get to 6 mana, you don't even have to worry that they'll be able to counter it. You can just like slam it down. And obviously it will kill a Death Shadow or any creature no matter how large it is. And if they attack into it, you're going to gain 6, kill that creature, and then you still have basically another 3/3 that has Death Touch. And so unless they're able to, string together multiple Colligans commands, they don't really have a good way to deal with Wormcoil Engine, and it can kind of take over the game, or at least they'll have to attack into it unprofitably, and it'll gain you a lot of advantage. So that was my main reason for trying Wormcoil Engine, on top of the fact that one thing I was kind of trying lately is there's more decks like I was also thinking about the Mardu Pyromancer deck. There are more decks that it doesn't run Path to Exile, and so if you were to like say plunk down a Wormcoil Engine, just be really good. I was gonna say something else, I forgot. Anyway, well that's the deck. So feel free to ask questions or let me know what you think. And by the way, to anybody who's left comments recently, if I haven't replied, my apologies. The reasons are the same as what I mentioned before. Okay, as I believe I said this already, I am going to show you guys a league that I've already played, and I'm going to be doing it as commentary over the gameplay. I know that's not everybody's favorite, but as I said, I think there are good reasons to review this league. So let's get into it. All right, here we go. Looks like I was on the play for this match. Oh, I remember this one. So I looked at this hand actually for a little bit, and I was like, all right, if this is a creature-based matchup, it's probably going to be okay. It's a bit unfortunate that there's going to be so much rampant growth for our opponent, just mean accelerating them with all these Path to Exiles. But as long as it's not something like combo, I was like, I guess it'll be fine. it was just a weird hand, but I mean, it had 3 lands, 3 removal spells, and a threat, so I kept it. Then my opponent did this, and I was like, Gemstone Caverns, the only deck that I know that plays that is Mono Blue Tron. And I was like, I was like, if it's Mono Blue Tron, I will never beat Mono Blue Tron with this hand, ever. So I was just kind of curious to see what they exiled. And they exiled a repeal. What I did might seem a bit strange, but I just conceded. The game has ended. I decided that I might be in a better... Like, I'm not going to win this game. It's going to be nearly impossible. I basically have a 4-card hand against a deck that already is probably slightly has the upper hand. They have a lot of counter spells. They're going bigger. I've played against Mono Blue Tron a few times, and I think it's easier than, say, regular Tron, but I don't think it's. I think it can still be pretty tough. They also have ways to refuel. They can jam threats and then thirst for knowledge into more threats. So I didn't have any pressure till turn 4. So I went ahead and conceded. So as far as sideboarding goes, I thought about bringing in Relic of Progenitus because of the loop with Mindslaver, but I thought, well, if it's getting to that point, I'm probably already in a bad spot. So I took out a couple Path to Exiles. I took out the Lightning Helixes and the Electrolyze, and I basically took out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cards. I know I brought in 2 Dispels, a Negate, Counterflux, Disdainful Stroke, and something else that I brought in. It was the Wear Tear, and I brought in the Wear Tear for, if they say played like an Oblivion Stone or something like that, and I'd be able to, or if they did one of those plays where they don't quite have enough mana and they play a Mindslaver out intending to crack it on the next turn, I would have an answer to it. So that's how the sideboarding went. I do want to play first. Why did it ask me? Because I would have given him. No, that's right, because I conceded. So I'm sure that I elected to play first. And I don't remember, but I felt like I would imagine that I kept this hand. Opponent has mulliganed to 4, so that's kind of good for us, being that we conceded game number 1. Opponent plays a tower. We're going to obviously untap with Colonnade, and we're looking untap Serum Visions. We're looking for a 3rd land, and we're looking for a Geist of St. Traft in a perfect world. No Geist, but Cryptic Command is also good, being that they're less cards. There's a chance that we have the time where not having the Geist and whatnot is gonna be fine, and then they're less likely to have multiple blue sources. So we might be able to actually use this Cryptic Command. So our opponent made a play here that I thought was a little weird with Snapcaster Mage, only because they may have just thought we're blue-white. Maybe it was not that weird of a play, but my thought was at the time that it seemed a little strange. Mainly because, like I said, my thought when they did it was, that's weird that they would do that. Their deck's not really about killing with damage. They have no other ways to support. Like, it's not like they can back the Snapcaster Mage attacks up with burn. But nonetheless, I decided to go ahead and Spell Queller it, even though I could have Spell Snared it. I thought the Spell Snare might be better off later for countering a Remand, which the deck usually plays 3 to 4 copies of. And I wasn't very worried about what he could untap and do. He's not going to untap with Tron. He's going to untap with 3 mana at the most. And this sort of just means that we're not any under pressure. Not that it's that worrisome, but I felt like I was fine to go ahead and Spell Queller the Snapcaster Mage, even though it was on my turn, because they're going to untap and play 3 lands and do nothing. This is kind of what I was hoping for. Also, if assuming they do nothing and they don't have a way to kill the Spell Queller, then we knew we were going to draw that Cryptic, and we get to untap with Cryptic mana, which is good. So then we have 2 Cryptic commands. What I decided to do here, I knew that Remand is a spell that they could have, but I felt like I wanted to try and I wanted to find a red mana source for this, as well as find additional pressure. 2 mana, I mean, we're in a good spot in that we have Cryptic Command up and we have Spell Queller, but we don't have much additional pressure, and I felt like, okay, it was like 9 attacks to get it done with the Spell Queller. The longer I keep him off Tron, the better. So I thought, well, they're not doing anything with this Cryptic Command anyway. So I decided to go ahead and bounce a land with Cryptic Command. So he condescends, which gives him a couple scries, and we kind of sort of, unfortunately didn't get to do with this Cryptic Command what we wanted to. But at the same time, we have another Cryptic Command, a Spell Snare for a man, and a Logic Knot, and a Counterflux. We have a lot of counters in our hand, and it's almost, in some ways, you could say totally fine to throw a Cryptic Command into a Condescend like that, because we have enough counters where if we can force him to spend his counters protecting something like a land, then that's going to make it more likely that their other counters resolve. So I felt like it was worth the risk. Drew Spell Queller, which will help us speed up that clock, and obviously we attacked. So I I decided to go ahead and cycle that Cryptic because I wanted to I wasn't making a land drop, and I thought, okay, he's tapped out. If I can bounce one of his lands, put him a land behind, as well as say find like a Sulphur Falls or something like that, then the tempo play, he's further away from assembling Tron. We're developing our mana base. His mana base is going backwards. He's already missing land drops. Also, if we ever, we're not able to apply much more pressure. If the game state gets to a point where, we're countering things, it's going to be nice to be able to cast multiple counters a turn should we need them. So I wanted to kind of get the Cryptics out of my hand anyway for all those reasons. Path to Exile is good. At least we don't want too many of those, but I kept 2 in the deck because we'll probably end up having to path a Worm Coil Engine, and it's nice to be able to have an answer to Worm Coil Engine that doesn't have to be a counterspell. That way we can save the counterspells for things that we can't remove with Path to Exile, like his Planeswalkers that the deck usually plays. Oh, wait. Okay, so let me explain this here. Let me think really quick if this was the turn where I thought for a while of how to do this. Right. So there was this turn where I kind of had this. I tanked for quite a while trying to decide how to deal with this Cyclonic Rift. I will just say I don't know if that this was quite it, but I decided to Spell Queller his Cyclonic Rift because I felt like, okay, we're still not going to be under any danger unless he untaps and goes mine, but I didn't think it would have to be mine exactly, and I felt fairly confident that he didn't have it, and I really wanted to, as I said before, like increase the amount of pressure that we were putting on our opponent. So our opponent hit the fast forward button there. Our opponent didn't do anything. He missed the land drop like we thought he might. So now we get to go ahead and bash for 4. And now I feel really good about the game. I have the amount of, 4 damage a turn is so much more quick and respectable than 2 damage. And so I'm kind of looking, at this point I would probably just never, I don't feel like we need to do anything except sit on the counter spells. Opponent has Tron. Obviously he drew that off the top. Doesn't appear that he has anything to do with it. Why? There was a reason I didn't fetch there. I think it was because, depending upon what he did, I wasn't worried about my life total. I wanted to have all my mana available at instant speed. I didn't want to fetch for this Flooded Strand and then have him do something. Plus, it keeps more lands in the deck, and I do still want to find a red source. So it's not like our life total's not a worry. So we don't have to crack this until we're ready to. So this is actually the turn I was talking about. So our opponent's going to repeal the Spell Queller, and we can't Spell Queller his repeal. We can't Spell Queller the repeal because 3 for X means that repeal has a converted mana cost of... I guess I could have actually repealed... Spell Queller the repeal. It is 4 or less, so that would have worked. But the ultimate decision that I decided to make was to let this happen, and then what I'm then able to do is here's the thing. If let's say that I Spell Queller this, and he untaps and plays another island, and then has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's Karn mana. I think Ugin's 8. I don't know that a lot of blue lists don't play Karn, but he could. Plus the blue. So he's able to play. Basically, he's able to play a big threat with blue mana backup. That was my worry about. Say if I had spell quellered this and then logic knotted, I would have logic up on the next turn, but he might be able to fight through that. Versus if I leave this up and these two blue sources, then I can counterflux. So what I decided to do to protect myself next turn is just let him repeal one of the spell quellers. Okay. I hate... Why do I tell myself never to use that button for that reason. Damn, I have to go back. Okay, this is back to where we were talking about. So what I decided to go ahead and do is let him repeal the spell queller. Because in that case, I can just go ahead and spell snare his Cyclonic Rift. And I get to keep the spell queller anyway, but I get to go ahead and just like let this happen. Counter the other Cyclonic Rift, so I get to keep my spell queller in play, and then I get to hold up Counterflux here or Path to Exile if I need it, as well as next turn, if I don't have to counter anything, I just get to put the spell queller back in play. So this is kind of what I was going through the thought process here of, okay, how should I handle this? And this is when I was like, well, like if I tap these two for the logic knot and don't let it resolve, then I can't have counterflux up and blah 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 blah. So I canceled everything else out and did exactly what I said, which was I let the repeal happen, and then he casts the Cyclonic Rift, and I just spell snare it. And so now I have counterflux up, which means whatever he tries to tap out and play next turn, I kind of have this trump counter spell. And then if I don't need to do anything, if he just doesn't have any action, then I can just put the spell queller back into play. Opponent goes for a Wormcoil Engine, leaving 1 mana in the pool. So the right thing here is to move into the second main phase before deciding to do anything, so they have access to 1 less mana. So we go to the second main phase, and then also you want to sequence. You want to path first, just in case they have, say, like a Dispel. You can path the Wormcoil Engine and then eat the Dispel with the Spell Queller if they brought that in. So I go for the path. I thought he didn't have anything. Oh, so he's condescending just for a scry. But I'm like, I don't want you to scry. So I'll queller that anyway. And so all that worked out pretty well, because now we have our 4 power back on the battlefield, opponents at 8. And if we now, then we can basically, if we draw a land that we can play untapped, we can kill them with Colonnade. If we don't, we get to have counterflux up to be quite well protected from anything that he could do. But we draw the land, and so we just Colonnade and attack for 8. Okay, see you guys for game 3. Game 3, opponent keeps 7, I keep 7. He's on the play. And that was probably about the best draw that we could have. What we might need to do, though, in order to guarantee that we resolve it, is do so with counter backup, or we might even need to wait till like Cryptic bounce a land at the end of his turn to get him to fight over it. I'm obviously going to go ahead and just go into Serum Visions. We know exactly what we're playing against, and we know exactly what we're looking for in this matchup. And I could have easily just... In fact, it was probably more correct to just get a Steam Vents there. To have double red up. So, Spell Queller, Steam Vents, Cryptic Command. This is kind of what I'm looking for, because I get to see like how my opponent's mana base is developing. Blue Tron isn't like Green Tron in that they're slow. They're more of a control deck. They're slower to. They're kind of like a weird tempo deck in some ways, which is like they're just trying to tempo you out until they can play Tron and do powerful things. But I'm pretty sure I ascribe both of these to the top. This is what I'm looking for in that if my opponent doesn't have really fast mana development, and only has like say one blue source up, I can Spell Queller before I play Geist just to kind of see how, kind of test the waters, right? Like sometimes people will counter the Spell Queller when maybe they shouldn't, or they feel like they need to because they have no other removal spell. So we're at 15. We just played a land, shocked. So we have Queller up, and we have some Logic Not action. So my opponent didn't have a... They did not have Tron. They had another blue source. So I'm going to go ahead and do what I discussed, which is go for the Queller, to which my opponent remands it. And now what I'm going to do is basically go shields down, and I'm going to... one thing we'll see if I should have... What I should have done here... I'm going to play Geist, but what I should have done... I'm curious to see if I did it. I think if I remember back, I didn't. But what you should do in this situation is shock to pay for Condescend before you play Geist, which it looks like I did not do. So that was a small mistake on my part, because I could have gotten this Condescended for one, and I just would have felt real stupid. So my opponent actually had a remand. The reason I was willing to try to go shields down, by the way, is because if my opponent has Ugin, that's really bad. If he like plays a tower and then Ugins. But outside of that, there might be a chance that I can use, say, the Cryptic Command to deal with it. I might be able to bounce something back to his hand, attack with Geist, something like that. But I felt like it was worth the risk of trying to. Our opponent doesn't have Tron yet. He may not. He may just, untap Tron and slam something horrible, but he might not as well. Kind of erred on the side of they're not as fast at putting together Tron as the other deck. Plus, I just felt like unless they're getting real next level-y, they would have had to. My feeling was if they had Tron, they would have played it. Basically, they wouldn't have gone second island. They would have played Tron. They would have put Tron together. So now I'm going for the Geist because I have Logic Not backup to help the Geist resolve or to protect myself from a big nasty spell. And I think I didn't fetch. I might have. But I think if I was going to do this now, if my opponent doesn't do anything, I just would... I wouldn't fetch the end of his turn for fear of something like Gibson given in response while my man is tapped down or something like that. Oh, I remember what my opponent did here. They play a Chalice. That's what they're tapping out for. But I didn't even bother with the Chalice. I have nothing in my hand that cost one. this did make me think, okay, if they're going to Chalice here, maybe they're, they have a Worm Coil Engine or something to that effect, and they're going to try to protect it. And like I said, I didn't fetch for that. He had 4 mana up. Sometimes they play Gifts. I was just like, there's no reason to. I can just, hold up the mana. Having Geist obviously makes this matchup much better. Oh, excuse me. I wish when you used this middle button, it would ignore any pauses. Because that's what it's doing. Like, my opponent must have just sat here and thought for a while. And so it's making me click through that time. I wish, Magic Online knows all the events happen, so I wish when you use this button, it just went to, like, next triggered event, next event, next event. And I could play the game out at a more reasonable pace here. And I'm like deathly afraid to use this button. Cause I think it just goes to the end of the turn. And so if I click it, it'll just suddenly race through his turn here, and I don't want that to happen. Alright, opponent's tapping some mana. 1, 2, 3, 4. He has enough now to naturally do whatever he wants to do. Worm Coil Engine. Trying to remember, did I counter draw? I guess we'll just take a look. Yeah, I did. So I think that's the right way to do this here, is to counter draw, and then if he has something like a Dispel, you have Logic Knot backup, and you have the exact same play again the next turn. Redundant Geist might be useful if our opponent, say, was able to resolve like an Oblivion Stone or something to that effect. Bolt doesn't do anything, but opponent's almost dead regardless. If we can play a Queller out next turn, then that is lethal. Oh, my lord, come on. Okay, at the main phase. I guess I can pause this again for you. Opponent plays another land. Seven. 8. Okay, so Ugin. So obviously that's game, because if we Cryptic Command it, it's not game. But if we just go ahead and Logic Knot for 1 or 2, then it gives us enough mana to also put Spoil Queller into play and present lethal. So I think I Logic Knot unless he pays 2, just because of shenanigans. You never know. And now we can put the Spoil Queller into play, but our opponent doesn't give us the chance. He goes ahead and concedes. So that's going to do it for round 1, everybody. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys tomorrow for round 2 with this Jeskai Geist deck. Bye for now.